Am I wrong for taking the wrong kitten on purpose? I, 31 female, recently went and got a kitten with my husband, 32 male. The seller had 5 identical black kittens, and despite wanting a girl one, they only had a boy one left. 3 girls, 2 boys, ready to collect in 2 weeks. Because it's so hard to purchase cats these days, I decided to settle with the boy and gave a deposit for him. The seller called a week ago saying the cat was available to collect, and when we arrived, all 5 kittens were still there. The seller looked at the genders and handed me a boy, then left the room to go grab some cat food she was going to give us. While she was gone, I got the idea to switch the boy cat with one of the girls, so my husband quickly found a girl one. We put her in the carrier and put the boy back with the rest, and when the seller came back with the food, she didn't realize they were switched. We took the kitten and the food and left without her knowing what we did and left to go back home. A couple of hours later, I got a call from her asking if she gave me a girl cat by mistake. I lied and pretended to check and said he was definitely a boy, and she apologized saying she must have got the genders wrong and told me the buyer wanting a girl was refusing to have the boy cat. I told her I was sorry that happened and reassured her it was an easy mistake to make. I casually mentioned what we did to a coworker last night, telling her I managed to get a girl after switching them, and she wasn't impressed. She said that I shouldn't have switched them and that it was wrong to mess with the seller and buyer like that because I made someone wait 2 weeks for nothing and I made the seller struggle selling it. I told her it was no big deal because the person who wanted the girl cat could look elsewhere and this way the boy cat can go to a loving home. She still wasn't happy with me, so I told her gender doesn't matter for a cat and that sometimes you have to look out for yourself in life. Today I came home to the office and everyone was acting differently around me, being cold and trying to spend as little time around me as possible. I overheard someone telling a coworker what I did and they seemed really disgusted with me, but I don't understand how doing something so insignificant has made everyone so angry. I asked my husband if he felt guilty for doing it, and he reassured me that I shouldn't feel bad about it. I looked on the seller's profile and saw that the boy cat had been purchased, so she didn't struggle to sell him. I do feel a bit guilty for switching the cats, and everyone at work seems to be pretty irritated with me, so I feel like maybe I was wrong and I shouldn't have switched them. Am I the asshole for switching the cats on purpose?
I have a crazy story for you, and it's been a minute since I've had a good crazy one. All right, so last year we got a new neighbor, and immediately upon them moving in, they were an issue. So what you need to know about our neighborhood is, one, we're in an HOA, and our HOA is pretty strict. We like it because it keeps everything very uniformed and very nice out here. The other thing you need to know is some of the houses out here are 8 to 10 feet apart, and others are only 4 to 6 feet apart. All right, so there's the facts. Let me tell you the crazy. New neighbors move in and they decide that they're going to make improvements to their front yard. Also, they're going to put a fence up. So they call the surveyor. Surveyor comes out and marks where the fence is going to go. Old neighbor sees the marks, goes over there, knocks on the door, and very politely says, "Hey, I saw your marks. I just wanted to give you a heads up. Per the HOA, your fence cannot start in your front yard. It has to start on the back edge of your house and go out." The new neighbors were like, "We don't care. We're going to do what we want to do." Old neighbor says, "Okay, just want to give you a heads up. That could be a costly mistake." Then she says, "Hey, we share a flower bed in the front of our yard. I usually maintain it because the people that used to own your house were elderly. I love yard work. They didn't love yard work, but they would pitch in for the materials. Do you still want to keep doing that?" And they said, "No, get your crap and get." She was like, "Okay." So the next day she goes outside and the flower bed was edged in bricks. So she went outside and she got her bricks off of their side. All of a sudden, a cop car pulls up. She doesn't think anything of it. They told her to get her stuff and get. So she's working. The police walk up and they're like, "Ma'am, are those your bricks? What are you doing? Is that your flower bed?" And she looks up and she's like, "No, it's not my flower bed. These are my bricks. We have new neighbors. Our neighbor said that they didn't want me to do the flower beds anymore, so I'm taking my bricks." Police are like, "Well, that's why we're here, yada, yada." Right about this time, I'm getting home. I kind of see everything and I'm like, you did not just call the police on her. I just knew what it was. So they're in a heated debate. All right. The next day I get home and the fence company has already come and put the fence up. And sure enough, it is on the front corner of their house, all the way down their side yard, all the way to the backyard. Old neighbor, because their houses are only 4 feet apart, old neighbor's bushes are inside their fence. Like they're planted on the outside, but they've grown inside the fence. Old neighbor walks out, looks at it, realizes she can't even walk down the side of her house anymore, and that's the side where her air handler is. So she's like, you've got to be kidding me. So she starts taking her bushes out. They called the cops on her again. Cops come out. They're like, what's the problem? She said, I have no idea. These are my bushes. They were inside her fence. So I have to remove them because I have to be able to get to my air handler. The police are like, okay, what's the problem? New neighbors are like, she's touching our fence. The next day, the new neighbors are in their front yard. Now, the half of their flower bed has been torn up. So new neighbors are in the front yard and they're working on their flower beds, right? Old neighbor turned her sprinklers on. Just turned them on, doused them. So they called the cops again. So the cops have been called multiple times by the new neighbors. The old neighbor has turned on her sprinklers when the new neighbors were in their yard doing yard work. So she completely doused them. Cops got called again. They are not seeing eye to eye. They are not being good neighbors. And it is the Hatfields and the McCoys over there. Okay. They're not even looking at each other's houses at this point. So that's where we left off. So one day I'm coming home from work and the HOA vehicle is parked in between their two houses. And there is a bitter debate happening in that front yard. And the HOA is basically saying that fence cannot stay there. You didn't get it approved. You're lucky that the fence company that you used knows our HOA guidelines and used the correct fencing, but you didn't get it approved. You need to take the fence down. New neighbor's like, I'm not taking the fence down. HOA looks at him and says, I'm going to fine you for every single day that you don't take the fence down. So they're pissed. Pissed. Old neighbors are like, tried to tell you, you don't want to listen. You don't want to be a good neighbor. Too bad, so sad. Hope it hurts, right? As she should. Fast forward a month. They've moved the fence to where it needs to be. But also, no, there's more. The audacity. When they put their fence up, the HOA owns a certain point all the way. We all live on a pond, all the way to the pond. Well, every couple of yards, there's an extra flower bed, and it's just to make the community look nice. They decided that they really like that flower bed, so they fenced in the HOA's flower bed in their yard as well. So not only did they have to push their fence back, they had to bring their fence up as well. How are you going to be a stickler to your neighbors about her bushes and all this and get off my lawn and don't touch my property and then try to commandeer our property? That was wild to me. All of a sudden, couple months go by, everything is good to go. We really haven't heard anything from them. One day we open up our mailbox and everybody has a, hey, we're new here and we just want to wish you a Merry Christmas card and a little baggie of like treats. And it's from the new neighbors. So I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, absolutely not. No, none of us are responding to this. So I go to my other neighbors and I'm like, did you get one of these? And they're like, yeah. And after the way they acted when they moved in, no, thank you. You stay over there. We'll stay over here. We're good. Hatfields and McCoys. We all chose a side and we were on old neighbor's side. Every single one of us were on old neighbor's side. So like when we pass old neighbor's house, we roll our windows out. Hey, how you doing? New neighbor. It was bad. But things are not always like they appear. So come back for part 3, final part, I promise. And I'll tell you the crazy side that we found out. And this is the final part. This part is called, you never know what's going on behind closed doors. And things are not always the way they appear. So the old neighbor comes out to do some yard work one morning and she hears the most concerning sounds coming from this house. And the more she hears, the more anxious she gets. And she is like, something is not right over there. So she goes inside, she talks to her husband, and he's like, butt out. And she said, come outside and hear what I'm hearing. And then if you still feel like that, we'll talk. He walks outside. He hears what she's hearing. He's like, it's not our problem. They've made it very clear. They do not want anything to do with us. Old neighbor looks at him and she's like, absolutely not. No. She calls the cops. She said, hey, listen, what I'm hearing from the neighbor's house is not good. It might be nothing, but it might be something. I need you to come out. So the police come in full force, pull into the driveway, bang on the door. New neighbors are not answering. Cops are banging on the door. New neighbors still not answering. Finally, they bust in the door. This guy is beating the ever-loving piss out of his wife. He almost killed her. So they break them apart. They get the husband in handcuffs. They put him in the back of the cop car. They call an ambulance. Ambulance checks her out. She refuses to go. She's got kids. They don't know anybody here. They're not good with any of the neighbors. She will not go to the hospital. Old neighbor walks over and she said, listen, I'll watch the kids. You're good. Just go get checked out. You don't look great. I'll watch the kids. New neighbor's like, I can't ask you to do that. We've made your life a living hell these last couple months. Old neighbor goes, I do not care. Go. I'll watch the kids. He almost killed her. What the old neighbor was hearing was him beating the dog crap out of her. And she was screaming bloody murder, trying to get somebody, anybody to hear her and call the police because he had taken all of the electronics, everything, and locked them in the room, and she couldn't get to it. And they had like 6 locks on their door, and she couldn't get the doors open to run. If the old neighbor had not heard her screaming the way she was and decided, this doesn't sound right, I have to call the police, he would have killed her. No questions about it. He would have killed her. Now, how do I know this? I know this because right after this happens, old neighbor is doing the yard work for new neighbors. She's over there putting around their yard. So I look at her, I'm like, did you not learn your lesson? So I pull into her driveway and I'm like, come here. And she started laughing. She already knew. And I was like, what are you doing? She goes, oh, let me tell you. I'm like, what? So she tells me the whole story. I'm like, this is wild. She said, yeah, things are just not always what they appear. The guy, the husband, wanted nobody at all to be anywhere near his house because he has beat his wife for the last 15 years. And because he has alienated her from all the neighbors have never, ever stepped in. Old neighbor said, I don't care. I'm a good Southern woman. I hear something that's not right. I'm going to call it in. And she did. And she saved that woman's life. And then turns around, hugs her neck, and starts doing her yard work for her now because the husband is not getting out of prison anytime soon.
Am I the astronaut for telling my mother-in-law I'll pay for my wedding dress myself if she can't respect my few wishes? I, 25 male, will be marrying my fiance, G, 25 female, later on this year. I proposed to her a little bit before Christmas, and we're aiming for a November wedding. G has 2 older brothers, only one of which has gotten married, and for one reason or another, my mother-in-law, 68 female, was not involved in the planning of the wedding at all. She was pretty hurt over this, as she's always wanted to help plan her children's weddings, so when we got engaged, she offered to pay for most of the wedding, and in return, we agreed to let her help with the planning. In my mind, as long as I'm marrying G, I'm happy, so I was okay with this. The only thing I'm really sticking to that I refuse to change is what I'm wearing. My mother died when I was very young, and she was the daughter of a first-generation Scottish immigrant. My grandparents moved to the north of Scotland in the 60s, and my mother was brought up learning about her parents' culture. Since she's died, I've had a hard time connecting to that side of my family. After my grandfather died a few years ago, I decided that I wanted to wear her family's kilt when I get married. I have talked about this with my fiance before we got engaged because it is an unorthodox idea, but she thought it was sweet and liked the idea. A few days ago, my mother-in-law came up to me and told me I'd have to wear a traditional tux instead of a kilt. When I asked her why, she said it went against the view she had of G's wedding and that the colors of my mother's tartan clashed with the colors she had chosen for the wedding. When I told her that this was pretty much the only thing I'm unwilling to budge on, she brought up how she's paying for most of the wedding and wearing a tux is the least I could do. When I brought this up to G, she echoed the sentiment her mother had made about paying for the wedding. I'm able to pay for it myself, and I told G I thought she understood how important this connection to my mother was to me, especially because she can't be there, and if she wasn't able to accept that, then I'd pay for the wedding myself. G told me I was being a bit of a dick for being this stuck to what I want to wear. And once my mother-in-law heard that I would just pay for the wedding myself, she got really upset because it's always been her dream to plan G's wedding. I am feeling like a little bit of a dick right now and was wondering if I should just wear a standard tux. My family's kilt is really important to me, but this is causing more conflict than I thought it would. Update. So the past 24 hours or so have been eventful. I took most people's advice and talked to my fiance about this issue before going forward. Good. Her siding with her mother like this and going against me was really out of character, so I felt like I really needed to figure out what was on the go. The long and short of it comes down to money. G doesn't make as much of a salary as I do. I make almost 2.5 times her salary. Despite this, she's pretty insistent on things being 50-50 between us. Our finances aren't combined until after marriage because of some weird tax issues and legal things in our home region. But even with me making more, she insists we're on a team and have to go 50-50 on big things. Rent, car payments, electrical, wedding, etc. So even though I'm able to pay for the wedding myself, she's not able to pay for the half she feels like she'd want to pay. Because of this, she's really clinging to the idea of her mother paying for our wedding, even though I'd be more than happy to pay for it all myself. We talked yesterday evening and she said that since she accepted her mother paying for the wedding, their relationship has become pretty strained, with mother-in-law pretty much taking over the wedding planning. Apparently, mother-in-law was initially pushing for a tropical destination wedding in Jamaica, an idea G put down quickly as she knows I hate the idea of destination weddings. And mother-in-law had even tried to get final say on the dress G was going to wear, as well as she wanted final say over who the bridesmaids were. She wanted her friends' daughters, who G is not close with, in the party. I've had a pretty good relationship with mother-in-law so far, so I found it kind of odd that she went total momzilla, but I have noticed her and G drifting apart a bit, even though I never thought it was related. A few people thought that G actually hated the idea of the kilt and had mother-in-law acting as the bad guy to try to change my mind, and you're not completely wrong. She doesn't hate the idea, but doesn't really like that other male members of the bridal party will be wearing tuxes while myself and my cousin would be wearing kilts. She wanted consistency across the board and had expressed this to her mother. Mother-in-law took this as the opportunity to get me to wear a tux instead of getting the groomsmen to wear kilts, and had the wedding colors changed without G's knowledge to contrast with my family's tartan. When I talked to G yesterday, she said that she had just gotten out of a massive fight with her mother over changing the colors and really wasn't in the mood to start another argument with her. She acknowledged she was in the wrong for siding with her mom and seemed genuinely sorry. She said that in the stress of planning a wedding while having an overbearing mother, she had thought of the kilt as another detail and had forgotten of the significance of it to me, and that she was really sorry. In the meantime, a few changes have been made. My mother-in-law is no longer paying for the wedding and no longer involved in the planning. I'm going to pay half, and G never wanted me to pay more than half by myself for something that's for both of us, and my father-in-law is covering the parts that G is going to have some trouble covering. Mother-in-law is unaware of this. Father-in-law and mother-in-law are still together, however, he's not telling her he's helping pay. We're still getting married in November. Wedding colors have been changed back to match my kilt, and we've decided to rent kilts in our regional tartan for the rest of the groomsmen so that they can match the aesthetic. Thankfully, no deposits were put down on things like tux rentals, bridesmaids' dresses, or decorations, so no money lost. I know a lot of people told me to seriously reconsider marrying G, and going into our talk last night, I really was, but I'm happy with how things turned out since this was really an anomaly in her behavior, and I really am excited to marry her.
I realized my mother literally does not love me at all. Honestly, she pissed me the fuck off today. Like, she pissed me off so bad that I had to call like 3 of my best friends, get them on the fucking phone and let them know what she did. Mother and her boyfriend, the man that walks on fucking water, the man that's Jesus to her. Don't get me wrong, I like the man. I like the man. That's not what this is about. They've been road tripping across America. I don't know why. My mom is now in a town that is an hour away from me. And I'm like, Mom, okay, first of all, I have friends that live in that town. I really want to go to that town. And I'm like, Mom, you're like an hour away from me. Like, I'll come and see you. And your man's, and like, we can get lunch and we can hang out. She's coming to me Friday, right? But we're like an hour away. I'm like, oh, I'll just do like a little day trip. Like, that'll be so fun that we can all just like hang out. I never see my mother. I see my mother maybe 2 to 3 times a year. So I'm like, okay, you're in the same state as me. Like, let's hang. You're an hour away from me. Like, let's hang. Call her today. And I'm like, hi, like, let's hang today. She's like, I'm not really sure about that. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, well, we're here visiting his parents. So like, I'm on their schedule. I'm on their time. I don't really think I have like time for you. It's like, oh, like, don't worry, Mom. Like, I'm just going to come have like lunch or like a coffee with you guys. And then I'm going to go and like see one of my friends that lives out there. She's like, no, like, I just like, don't think that's really going to work. I'm like, okay, well, like, what are you guys doing today? She's like, I don't really know. I just think we're going to be like really busy though. And I'm like, this bitch just doesn't want to see me. I literally called all my friends and I was like, whose mother? Like, I cannot even imagine any of your mothers being an hour away from you and just being like, no. Literally, of course, it's my mother. She's like, no, but like, see you Friday. Mind you, I'm only seeing her for like a total of like maybe 48 hours. I get it. You have your life. You're on a vacation like with your mans, but you've been on a vacation with your mans for like a week and a half now. And like me and the boyfriend get along really well. Like I really like him. I know if I was to text him, be like, oh my God, like I'm only an hour away. Would love to get like coffee with you guys or something. He'd be like, yeah, like come on down. Like come on down. Like he's a very nice man. My mom is the fucking weirdo. Like she's the one. She's the problem. So because her and I have been talking about this for days. I'm like, I just got the new car. Like I'll make the drive down. She's like, yeah. And then she's like, no. I said to her, I was like, I don't like your energy and I'm not really liking you right now. Also making me feel like I'm just some weird girl that like she doesn't want to hang out with. I'm like, bitch, I'm your fucking daughter. Like I'm your daughter. Just thought she would be so excited to see me. Because normally she is. Also, it has nothing to do with his parents because she's been wanting me to meet them for a while. Literally just comes down to my mother not wanting to see me. And I guess I'm just low-key hurt by that because I find it weird.
Okay, boom. Me and my boyfriend at the time is breaking up. We live together. I was moving out. I go to the house to get the rest of my things at like 2 o'clock in the morning. When I get off of work, he's on the phone with a girl. In my mind, we weren't broken up. To him, we were broken up. So make a long story short, I put my hands on him. He then restrained me by the neck and we got to tussling. I fell. We both fell together, but he fell on top of me and he stayed in the project. So my head hit that hard ass towel. I passed out. And when I woke up, I pretended like I lost my memory. He didn't show no emotion the whole time until I blacked his eye. And then when I woke up from passing out, he was crying and kissing all over me. And I'm like, all I wanted was a little reaction. And now you're giving me a reaction. So I'm finna drag this. My actions are not justifiable, but they funny as hell today. So dude's waking me up and all this other stuff. And I'm just like, who are you? I don't know who you are. Mind you, my cousin is outside in my car waiting for me to come outside. But she doesn't know what's going on, and there's no way that I could tell her. He brings his little brother in the room, asks me if I know who he is. I pretended like I did not know who the brother was. I told them that they were keeping me hostage in the house, and they wouldn't let me go outside. So they eventually let me go outside, and I started running in the middle of the road. This is crazy. So now my cousin's freaking out, like, what the hell's going on? Like, she went in there okay, now she come out here, she's running in the street talking about this is not her car. Yeah, I told her I didn't remember having a car. I was supposed to be with my dad and my brother. Whole time I'm grown, haven't seen my dad and my brother in about 2-3 years. My cousin starts boohoo crying, freaking out, so she calls my dad. My dad starts cussing her out and saying, take her to the hospital. So we go to the hospital. We go to the hospital, they put a neck brace on me and they say, you know, they had to put a neck brace on because a nerve in my neck could be pinched. And if it was, then I could possibly be paralyzed. They should have shut up. So they run a CAT scan on me. Everything checks out. They about to let me out the hospital or whatever, but they never take this neck brace off of me. I goes home with the neck brace on. I still ain't tell my cousin that I faked all of it. Still ain't call my dad, tell him I faked all of it. Of course, ain't tell my ex that I faked all of it. My ex reached out to me the next day and say, I don't care what my mom said. So I'm like, hold on, what shorty say? He gonna tell me his mom said, won't nothing wrong with me and I was just crazy. I really didn't lose my memory. I was crazy. So she's actually diagnosed with bipolar disorder. So I'm like, how's she gonna call me crazy and you actually diagnosed with crazy? So now I'm finna show you what crazy is. I goes to shorty house the next day with the neck brace on, go in her room, make her cry, tell her, you know, your son put his hands on me and I had the hospital and they told me that I could be paralyzed, yada, yada, yada. So now I gotta wear a neck brace, drug it. So now the story must go on. So now I go back to work. I wear the neck brace. One of the little white shorties started laughing at me because I got a neck brace on. So I threatened to beat her up. I did not tell my ex any of this until a year ago. This happened, I want to say 2017. I really was insane. I don't know.
So I'm just thinking back to the time when I dated this guy who was unusually close to his sister, like uncomfortably close. And I can be a little jealous. So at first I just thought that I was being crazy. The first time that I went to his house, he was like, my sister's so excited to meet you, because he and his sister were adult roommates. Then we were all hanging out. She was hanging out in his room with us, and she ended up staying in there until like 2 a.m. So I was like, okay, cool, whatever. She seems nice. But then every time I came over, the same thing would happen, and I'd just kind of be sitting there, and eventually I'd be like, I kind of want to go to bed. Then I would go to bed, and they would go hang out in her room. And they were always, like, wrestling and, like, punching each other. He was always, like, picking her up and putting her over his shoulder. Then he started hanging out at my house more. And she would FaceTime him pretty much every single night. And she even FaceTimed him crying one night. And she was like, I just can't believe you've put this relationship above your own sister. I feel like we're not even close anymore. And he up and left right then and there. Like, we were about to eat dinner. He acted like it was a family emergency. And I'm thinking, like, y'all FaceTime every single night, and you live together. But then what did it for me was that we were all hanging out at the beach, and he and his sister were playing catch. Then she, like, tackled him in the sand, and then when she got up, he smacked her butt 3 times in a row. Before this point, I had thought, okay, they have a close sibling relationship. It might be different from mine and my brother's, but I'm just being jealous. I'm just being crazy. But that sent me over the edge. She also told me that their older sister was like a psychic, and she had done like a reading for them. And she had told them that they were soulmates and that they had been in love in a past life. And that's why they had such a close relationship. She would also always bring up how she and his ex-girlfriend were like mortal enemies, and how she was trying to get him to leave her for years. And she would bring up how when they were little, they would take baths together, and it like got weird. But she would bring it up like, you know, like kids when they're little taking baths together, like they get weird. And like, okay, fine, maybe, I don't know, but why are you bringing it up? Why do I need to know this? She also would always talk about how handsome he was, and she would always be like, you're so lucky. Like, I've always said, I just want to find someone that's just like him.
I need to get this off my chest. We've all had that one best friend that we thought we would be friends with for the rest of our lives. To the point where you do everything together like you are literally inseparable. And then one day, everything changes. And it could be a falling out, but in my case, we went from being the best of friends to her kind of slowly eliminating herself from my life. And when I communicated with her and asked her why, she told me I was crazy and that I was overthinking it. And then one year, she didn't invite me to her birthday. We always do birthdays together. That's when I knew I had to let her go. 2 years go by, one of her dogs passed away, and that made me really sad because I knew how much that dog meant to her. So of course, me, in my heart, I reach out to her and I say, I'm so sorry. And she did respond, and she was like, thank you so much. I'm so upset. You know how much that dog meant to me, blah, blah, blah. Another few months passed, still never heard from her. Then this summer, my father passed away. Not that I was expecting her to console me or be a friend that I can lean on, but I did think that maybe she would reach out to me. She watched all of my stories on Instagram when my dad passed away. Every single one of them. Every single day. And she never reached out. This crushed me so much to the point where I said, I need to unfollow this person. But the crazy part about all of this woman for the last 3 years has watched every single one of my Instagram stories. Every single day. Has never missed a day. Not even one. Why are you watching my life? If you really want to know how I'm doing or what I'm doing, why not text me or call me? If you were upset with me and didn't want me in your life anymore, why are you watching my stories? To the point where I almost want to call her and be like, what the fuck is your problem, bro? Has anyone else experienced this?
Here's how I ruined my own life on my birthday. Story time. So I woke up on my birthday morning expecting a little bit of a princess treatment from my husband and kids. My husband didn't say anything about my birthday. My kids didn't say anything about my birthday. So I just got myself ready and I went to work. I was expecting, you know, like a balloon on my desk or like a card or something, but there was literally nothing. And my manager called me in. His name was Steve. He's like, step into my office. I'm thinking, shit. Anyway, he calls me in. He's decorated his office and he says, happy birthday, hon. And I'm like, oh, finally. He goes, do you want me to take you out for lunch for your birthday, my treat? And it is now like 1 o'clock and this is the only person to acknowledge my birthday. And then he says, do you want to come back to my place? And I was like, okay. We've lost a candle. Anyway, we get to his house and he says, just let me head up to my room for a sec. Now feels like a good time to mention that he'd asked me to put on a blindfold, and I'm thinking, oh, something's about to go down. And I was so annoyed at my family. So he's gone for like 5-10 minutes. It felt like a very, very long time. Anyway, when he comes back, he's like, okay, take off your blindfold. So I lift up my blindfold, expecting to see him maybe in like a cute little butler outfit. But as I am sure you can imagine, that is not what I was met with. So I lift up my blindfold and I see my co-workers, my husband, my mum and dad, and my husband's mum and dad, literally all of my friends. They had all surprised me. They had a cake, they had balloons, and I was on the couch butt naked.